Our next session here is about Marathi women and their poetry. It's called Marathi Stri Kavita, Badalti Samhita Ani Sandarbh. And for this session, please join me in welcoming Anuradha Patil. Can we have a huge round of applause for Anuradha Patil, who will take us and talk to us a little more about Marathi poetry and Marathi women.
Talking about publishing for the first time, though I wrote poetry many years ago in college, and I have one of my oldest friends, hello Rina, 46 years we've known each other and shared each other's poems and short stories. It took me a long time to even want to give my poems to a publisher, because after a difficult first marriage which ended in divorce, I remarried an old friend. And even after 15 years of marriage, I hesitated to bring my thoughts into the public. In our time, domestic violence was swept under the rug. You didn't talk about it. No one wanted to publish you. But recently, many of you may have read Meena Kandaswamy's book of, When I Hit You. It's made waves in India. Social media talks about it. People are no longer afraid to talk about their experiences in public. So when my husband was posted, my late husband, when he was posted in Sri Lanka, where there was at a meeting, I met the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Law, Radhika Kumaraswamy. And we were talking about poems and all that. And she said, Jayashree, if you have poems or stories to share, why don't you give them to us? So I put together a collection. Mind you, this is like 14 years into my marriage. And it was published in Sri Lanka. And it's sold there, but limited edition. I think I bought a lot of books and forced my friends to read my poems years ago. But it was only recently that in December, I brought out this, publisher wanted to publish this book, a very young publisher, and I accepted, and they accepted, I was very happy because they were very young in age and in publishing. So talking about publishing poems is difficult because marketing is a problem. I don't want to go into the logistics of that. Instead, let me read you one poem about domestic violence. And these are not just my stories. I have helped and spoken to a number of domestic helpers around the world. We lived in 8 countries. And you hear their woes. It's not that everyone can just go run and get divorced. Some of them cannot, and they have to live within their families too. But this is a very short poem I'd like to read. It's called Shattered. Please answer me, she cried. After all these years, did I really deserve your souvenirs? A chipped tooth, a bloody nose, a bruised body, a scarred soul. This bleak life? Tell me, answer me, she cried. Did it serve your purpose? Was there a purpose? I was not the one to blame for all your regrets. We all stood silent. As her tears flowed, her body shrunk, her shoulders hunched with years of pain. Her petition was denied. So this was a domestic helper who worked with us, and sorry, my mic is going haywire. Sorry, can you hear me? I'm moving around, but this was a domestic helper, and she really tried hard with her husband. So I wrote this in her honor. Her name was. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit about my other life as the spouse of a civil servant who was in the foreign service. So we went from country to country, which was amazing. It was amazing, so many new people, new cultures, but we were transients, if you know what I mean, right? So by the time you settle down, the children settle down, it's time to move on. So in a way, it was a fascinating life, all the people you met, the cultures you lived in, and you really had lived in and met so many interesting people, the local people and Indians whose ancestors had gone and settled there 200, 300 years ago. But at the end of it all, you wonder, what am I doing there? Because, I'm this trailing spouse beside or behind my husband. And many of us had no careers to really look back at. Like, at my age now, I wonder, I said, gosh, if I had insisted that I go and study here and do this there, what would have happened? But it wasn't possible. No regrets, but I will read you a poem which is called The Trailing Wife. I think you'll understand. So, my entrance beside him, Ivory brocade Banarsi sari, glittering jhumkas, golden bangles, jingle jangle, rings on my fingers and toes, illicit nods, affirmative words. Power by default begets cocktail smiles. Apologies. Stalwart, feisty in the realm of unknown gods and goddesses. Repeat after me, or him, or her. Really? But really? Not really. Non sequitur discourses. I listen, often in covert disdain. 2 steps back, halt, guilty as charged. Non designated person. Futile moments reflect academia interrupted. Hemingway, Neruda, missing you. Converse, non-political. Smile, social. The milieu, insensitive, ignorant, askew. Heartbeats mark time. Crescendo chatter. I falter, gasp, puffs of air, smothered choke. No exit too near, fall in line. The trailing wife's life undefined. But having said that, it was a fantastic life because we met so many people and I was able to write all these things. But, you know, a bit of regret does creep in when you think that, oh, I could have been this, I could have been that. But basically, I'm here to tell the tales, right? So can I hand over to Satyajit? Yep.
Thank you, Jayashree. So it's really good being back here, and you know, I've always wondered who the actual audience for this stuff we do is, and it's you. It's kind of amazing being here. So, in terms of discussing that journey, I had a, you know, it was a long one for me, and what happened is I had written this sort of bunch of poems when I was a student at university, and halfway through that process, I thought these are too good. These are too good to hide. The world must see these. So I went to, you know, a big publisher. So big publisher, and I looked at it, and you know, there's a door. Back in the old days, there were doors and stuff. So you know, I walked up to the door, and I walked to the reception and said, "Is big editor here?" And they said, "You who?" And I said, I am myself, Satyajit Sarna, major poet." So they said, "Well, you know, do you have an appointment?" And I was like, "Yes." You know, so I lied my way into that. And I went there, and there's this person who said, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And I said, "No, read these. You must read these." So they looked at them and said, "Okay, thank you. But why don't you write a novel?" So then I went away. I put them in a box and put them away forever. And then I realized you have to write a novel to publish poetry. So I wrote a novel. That took about 5-6 years. Then I came back and said, "I've written a novel." They said, "Well, you know, it's still kind of hard." So ultimately, after years and years and years, I finally got a slot in those publishing lists. And so they published a book last year, which is this one. It's called The Profane. So I thought I'd read a couple of poems. In terms of, you know, the prompt we have, which is quietly flows the word. So I don't know where poems come from, but they come. As far as I know, I mean, there are, of course, poets who wake up at 7 in the morning and actually do this like a job, and they get it done. I don't know how that works. But for me, it has to come from somewhere. There has to be a seed of some kind of inspiration. And then after that, it's labor. But to begin with, something comes from somewhere. You know, without getting any more mystical about it. So this is, you know, a poem called Cobra Child. And the inspiration for this was literally that I was one day, you know, doing some yoga. I don't do too much yoga because I don't know if it's politically conscionable, like in this day and age. And, you know, I worry if I do one asana, some 5 MLAs will rebel somewhere. So I don't want to get into that. But so this is called Cobra Child. When the man says, "Cobra, child," I don't think yoga. The sun streaming down, Purple rings glowing in my eyelids, face wet in the grass. I think of the holy mysteries. See the long night, rain-filled, the river flooding white, the hood of the cobra, and the child. Evil uncles in their stone halls, milk and ghee, blood and milk, door frames smeared, blood and milk. Oh, my poor country with its child saints, searching for sugar in the rug, scooping the cream up from the pot. All we have is mud and saints, lighting the lamps, feeding the beasts, turning ever to saints and hope. Baskets of flowers, keepers of chappals, holding always the fear and the hope. Benighted country, brick shanty towns, sea of sugar cane, islands of yellow light, swinging from the wire, from the brick and mold, all the darkness of the world, all the poor and the old, huddled, praying, for the child under the mountain, holding off the dark and wrath, beating back that proud usurper. My poor country whose saints are gone, dead men in their stony sleep, disappeared men, men of smoke, gone the way of the cobra, mud and blood, dust and hecklers. Holy country, making children for the plow, fodder for the hungry cannons, thrust into the border night, always in the solemn peril, that same child, some other cobra. So what came there was, just the seed that this daily practice we do connects to a lot of ancient stories. So in there it connects to, legends of, say, Baba Farid, legends of, legends from, the book of Exodus, and there are a couple more. So because we're in Bangalore, there is a poem I'd like to read, and this is a little long, and it's a story. And it goes back to sort of this one afternoon, one day, I think in 2007, and at a place called Shivana Samundaram. Does anyone know it? Yeah. So you know it. Yeah. This poem is called Shirts. It's for a friend who is departed. Her first boyfriend asked her to iron his shirts, and she did it. Guileless. She didn't know that you don't do these things. That love hurts, and people can ride your kindness. She gave him the shirts and said, kind and slow, that maybe they really shouldn't be together. But she ironed the damn shirts. We were incredulous. Then that one day, at the river, the water was green and moss lined the edges. Orange fish swam in the hazy current with us. She was floating on her back. I told her of my shock and loss. In rainy England, my uncle, who was kind and guileless, and his heart had given in on the carpet. His children right there. She floated in a spiral, hair a halo, and said, God bless all the living and the dying, and that every Parsi was raised in the fear of extinction. We drank our beer, sitting on the rocks, warm Kaveri slipping through the basin and the gorge, trees overhanging, the sun blowing light, beer making our limbs weary, head sleepy. Death was on our lips, but nothing could bring him into the house of our youth, and in the water the fish were alive, and when we broke the shining silk of it, the dream washed over each shoulder. Many years later, the police called it suicide. She walked out into the fields in the Midlands winter and lay down. Big slate sky, cold earth, I don't doubt it. Death lived with her, caressed her hair, held her for some time before they found her lying cold. For her brother and her boyfriend, a muting blow. They both stopped speaking. I was driving when the news came, and I could believe it. We had swum in the basin in the shadow of it. I had said that day there was no shame. To die young was noble. It was preferred. But that was bravado. I think of her often. This evening I was running, the rain was slanting, the light was blank. With no one watching, I lay down. The earth was throbbing, and that big sky was split by lightning. I closed my eyes to practice drowning. Are we out of time? One more? Okay, cool. So, less solemn. This one is called Her Boredom, and this literally, in the oldest of traditions, the poet narrator, who is not me, is hanging out in a bar and looking at pretty girls. This happens. Like Frank O'Hara stepping out to lunch. Oh, sorry, the poem is called Her Boredom. Like Frank O'Hara stepping out to lunch, or Irvid at the theater, you are looking for the true thing, the lilac star. Lillian Gish at the hot dog stand, or Venus dressed up as a senator's wife, until you hit the armor of her boredom. Her boredom is waiting for you to scrape lines off the moon for her nostrils, up the stairs, with a face like the azan, her hand under her chin, the girl who is asking nobody for attention. Still, it would be like ignoring a full moon, or the rain robbing the trees of their fruit. We are not made to resist the fall of starlight, the smell of candles hot in a wooden room. We know from nothing that something like honey must fall to the ground, and we listen for it. She whose shoulders are moving like perfume, she who waits like nobody's coiled sunrise. Would it do you any good to have a name for your lack of fortune? So thank you.
Not as tall as Satyajit. So, can you hear me? Yeah. Good afternoon, kia ora, as they say in New Zealand, because I come from New Zealand now. And namaskara to all of you, and in particular to my family who are in the audience. Well, my challenge or my publishing experience is not as great as my panelists over here. I'm a budding published poet. My poems are mainly in anthologies. But I guess my challenge has been that I am an Indian voice in a country that has many different voices. First of all, the Maori who inhabited New Zealand, and then the colonists who came after. So the tradition of poetry writing and publishing is very narrow, and to find a space in that, especially as a new Indian New Zealand poet, is my challenge. And much of the expectations of my writing is that I write about India or Indian things. But as Satyajit was saying, it's the truth or the thing that's true to you that you want to write about. And some of it flows from what is my Indianness. The other part is just me being a human being on the face of this earth. But having said that, I'm going to read you two poems. Both of them have been published. And the theme is about being a migrant. So the first is a short poem, and it's called Making a Salad. My hands work over green leaves on the kitchen table, and music banks out from my memory, making leaves travel. I remember crossing the date line and disappearing into an ocean, circling the bottom of my earth. I remember walking into a shelter made of wood, kind welcome on a sleeting southern summer day. I remember how the light smoothing the walls was gray with cold, how raindrops clung to windows before tearing down. Learning to feel cold was to understand new seasons. Here, there are 50 words for rain. I became an infant, discovering my face, hands, feet. I could not use words to say who I was. I remember how my first experience of lettuce prepared me to compile a recipe book for salads. The second one is a slightly longer poem, and I wrote it more recently to celebrate Waitangi Day, which is the day that the Maori people signed a treaty with the Crown or the Queen of England in 1840. And more we are beginning to celebrate it as a national day. And so this poem was written for that purpose. And I'll just give you a little bit of an explanation. I'm using some Maori words, and there's a Maori mihi, as I call it, an introduction, which is protocol you follow when you go into a formal Maori meeting, where you go and introduce yourself, and the meeting house is called a marae. So the marae is in the poem is the meeting room, and the word kuya is another word for an elderly person who's highly respected, a woman in particular. Manuhiri, visitor. Her grandmother told her she was a child of Manu, Manushi, daughter of humanity, blessed to be a visitor when she crossed the sea. The wooden gate is a threshold with arms outstretched in protection. The slow wash of green water's rhythm. Rising notes of another tongue is the wailing of her mother tongue. Her back, a billowing canvas, is taking shape. Her grandmother's tapping the geography of her in colors of the monsoon rain. She is dusk, light with all the distance around her. She crosses the threshold and offers her grandmother's verses, a garland of old earth sounds for the new. Namihi, korihi te manu, takiri mai I te ata, ka ao, ka awatea, tihe Maori ora. Kua tau tene manu, he manuhiri, he manuhari, ko te takahanga waiwai, ko te rere o te kupu. Ko tangi te nākau, he roimata aroha ki te mano whenua. No kotu tonu te whenua nei. He awe ko tōku mama, he awe ko tōku papa. Mate huruhuru te rere. Ka rere I te ao, ka rere I te pō, ka rere ki tōku whenua ake. Ma te ahika te manu ka ora. Tēnā koutou katoa. Blissful waters surround pain washed up over and over again. She sits among silent voices, bodies twitching to utter shame for carrying skin colored by others. What's a brown-skinned woman to do at the gates of a marae? The solidarity of color bears differentiation. He opened to a stance-defying rule. He said, I'm connected to islands by water. I'm connected to you by colonization. The gates opened enough for her to raise her head. When the kuya holds her hand, a sacred place ignites. You are a seed of the old banyan tree, swept from your grandmother's lap. Transplanted here, I see birds' nests, singing insects, and shoots bearing the weight of you. I see strong branches making light of your path. See how they are dropping roots. She feels the earth quiver under her feet. Across the table, she hears raging clouds roving to make wave upon wave to become sea overhead. White peaks roughed up on waters below are screeching gulls. How can she say that she is a visitor on a warm beach with sand beads, sketching a canvas stretched in her head? She is a mirror of herself. She is not a mirror of herself. She is a scooped grain of memory, of a love song for a life lived between her worlds. That's the end of the poem, but I will give you the translation of the Maori mihi that I had made for me, because there's a tradition is that when you go into a marae, you have to introduce yourself and give a bit of a genealogy, if you like. But I had this made for me because I did not want to talk about my genealogy, and I did not want to talk about which was my sacred mountain and which was my sacred river, which is kind of the thing that you do there. So the first part was actually a little bit of a proverb, a Maori proverb, which sort of says, the bird is singing, the morning has dawned, the day has broken, and there is life. That's the Maori proverb. But this is my mihi. This is my introduction to myself, to the Maori people. So there I say, through its dancing feet, this bird, and I'm referred to as a bird, has descended as a bird, as a visitor, as a dancing visitor. Through its dancing feet and its flowing words, its heart cries the tears of love for you, the home people. This is your land. My mother is a feather, my father is my feather, and it's by their feathers that this bird takes flight, taking flight into the day, taking flight into the night, from its own homeland, where the home fire burns and gives this bird life. Thank you.
Is it okay to go a little over? Okay. So I wanted to share a couple of poems as well, very quickly. And it's so interesting, this moment of publication of poetry, right? I want to also remind us that the publication is happening within a certain economy, right? We're operating within an economy where money is one of the currencies. We have other currencies in this economy as well. So the question is, what kind of an economy do we want our poem to be published within? The reason why I'm bringing this up is because the poem that I'm going to share with you is the first poem that I had published in a literary journal. And this is one of the rare poems that I actually got paid for. That I got $20 for it, right? And many of us who want to write poetry have had to think about the kind of model that we want to hold. Do we want to write while holding a job, right? Or do we want to make this the center, the writing the center part of our career? And if that is the case, then what kind of writing do we want to engage in? So these are all like questions that we need to think about. So this is capacity. Sometimes time is born tightly coiled. Sometimes it falls on you like shavings of light. Sometimes every turn stops dead, and there we sit like mad poets, flinging dried talk in the air. We are alone and lighted only by the flame inside us. When we lie down, grasses grow from us. In this poem of mustard and breeze, I can hide my face in his shoulder always as he sleeps. Almonds are found in maple fruit, and Kitratue, like Peking, is just a name, the outpost of another poem. Tongueless like tears, we rest against each other, willful, knowing we have other faces. I want to share one more poem with you, and the reason why I wanted to bring this poem here today is because unlike this poem was published in a mythology journal. So this is also a question that we want to hold as writers, as poets. Who is the audience that we want to reach towards? Who is the audience that we want to be engaging with our poems? And I was taking a little bit of a risk in this poem, right? Because I wanted the myth of she, the title of the poem is She, to reach out as a myth. So this was published in a myth journal. Her brows, thick with leaves, dangle from the door. I'm beckoned, enter. I enter, fitted with the clothes of moon and sun, veins young and clear as morning's ray, heart open. And black fiber on tree bark begins to speak, nectar of love in her eyes. She brushes her lower eyelid with her little finger and extends nectar to me. I suckle the love from her finger until it runs in my veins like blood red honey. When her heart reaches your heart, a sigh is all the sky hears. Monkeys bare their teeth and a valley opens up, laughing. Her laughter hides in the eyes of trees, in the blue open. Her presence blooms out of every form on earth. Her joy settles over each leaf, each pore. womb radiating her presence, the pulse of nature, and rainbow-colored fish, teeth missing, sing from an excess of love, eyes sharp with mischief, song skimming the surface of water, the depths of water. All that stands between me and a shore is a drowning. Song lifting leaves in eddy of wind, stroke of feathers. I sob with the immensity of it. This is not flying. This is flying. This is the heart of the vision where living moments gather and confer life into existence. She flows into earth, wearing a garment of red, weaving a dance of creation and destruction, child, woman, crone, all in one, all in me. Her eyes are full of mischief and indescribable emotion, love. Her breast of water, like abundance, flows in the sap of every leaf. Her wisdom speaks from tops of trees with monkey teeth. She is the vast of our vastest imaginings, nether of the underworld. Her flames span our wings. Every moment opens up to her presence like a seabird. I confer her joy upon me and wear it like a head wreath. And her tears fill up the seas. The first step she took became land, became earth, the code of our bones sung by her. She was the whale you saw at a distance, her song calling to you, sorrow etched around her eyes. She was the goddess you saw lined up against the wall in a suspect lineup, dupatta trailing on the ground, pain searing like a broken wing. She creased with emotion. All our stories, all histories, all the births of pasts and futures, like fish, like foam swirling around her, shapes of all lives we have ever met, lived, steady trickle. Steady water, are you listening? Water cupped in hands or in the mouth of a lion, water cast into bricks or poured into eye like light of dusk, water laughing with memory, with mercy, water or the force of thunder, drops of water beaded in hair like a crown or fool's heart. Turn to her face. It is easy to see her scars, disfigurements, fury and stillness carved by human time. But the law that turns its face towards us is that of her love, her extending heart. Wind calls to me from the rise of mounds. It is me walking in you, with you, as you. I learn from her the unconquered grace of a young huntress. I learn from her that liquid eyes can crackle. I learn of the courage of stars and constellations from her. Where did I go that I must return? I've been right here, curious and open. So we'll just... Yeah. Okay. So, sorry, we are out of time. But we will be milling around. We can wait outside for a few minutes. So in case anybody has questions, you can come up and talk to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences about being a published poet. Can we have a huge round of applause for our panelists?